First and foremost, thanks everyone for joining us. I hope everyone is doing well and staying healthy and safe out there. It's kind of a crazy time right now. But I'm the founder of VentureFizz. My name is Keith Klein. If you're not familiar with VentureFizz, we're the leading source for jobs and careers across the tech industry. So as a disclaimer, this is my first time leading an online event. So my first time using Zoom webinar. I've been a long-time user of Zoom and I'm a huge fan of the product, but I haven't used their webinar product. So hopefully this will go smooth. But our whole thought here was to host an event with Buildium, who's our partner for this. And if you're not familiar with Buildium, they are the only property management solution that helps real estate professionals win new business from property owners and community associations seeking services. And I'm sure Ben, one of our panelists, will get into a little bit more of what that means. But ultimately, we wanted to host an event together that was really focused on a meaningful topic of today, and that's managing remote sales teams. So whether if this is something that is new for your organization where the sales team is working remote, or if this is something that's ongoing with your organization, it's always helpful just to hear from other experts on how to keep your sales team engaged, productive, good tips there. Plus, what are some of the best practices on managing the team as a whole? So, my goal for this is to leave some time for questions at the end, probably 10 or 15 minutes. So if you have any questions, there's a chat section. So if you hover kind of over the toolbar at the bottom of Zoom, you'll see chat. So you can add some questions in there, and I'll be monitoring them as they pop up, and we'll include some of them towards the end. But thanks again to Buildium for partnering up with us on hosting this event. We've got a great panel. There's 3 VP of sales from some great companies in the Boston tech scene. So we got Michelle Peach from Drift, Erin Colin from Brightcove, and Ben Nadal from Buildium. So why don't we start off with some intros? If you could just talk a little bit about yourself, your company, and then the size of your sales organization. So Michelle, let's start with you.
Yeah, I'm Michelle Peach. I'm VP of Sales at Drift. At Drift, we provide a better way for businesses to buy from businesses, and we do that through conversational marketing. I specifically lead our mid-market team, so we focus on employee size ranges from 100 to 1,000, and our ICP. Our overall sales team, there's about 60 sales reps, and it ranges from the SMB motion all the way up to our enterprise motion. And thanks for having me today, Keith.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Ben, why don't you go next?
Sure. So afternoon, everyone. My name's Ben Nadal, and I'm Buildium's head of sales, and I've had the privilege to lead the Buildium sales go-to-market and participate on the executive team for almost 3 years now. And prior to Buildium, I was fortunate to learn from some sales executives that were a lot smarter than me, which is not very hard to do, unfortunately, while working at HubSpot, Google, Kronos, and Oracle. And in terms of what Buildium does, we are an all-in-one property management solution, and we help our customers be a bit more efficient and grow their business as well. So in short, the solution automates a material amount of their daily workflows, like advertising a listing and formalizing a lease, enabling tenants to pay rent, submitting maintenance requests, and things of the like. And we do, while doing all of this, we're also helping our property managers grow by actually sending them leads. In terms of the size of the sales organization, we are 50 folks strong, which includes a business development team, which is both outbounding as well as selling into the install. We have a sales operations organization, sales consultants, which are both inside and field focused, as well as sales engineer and beginnings of a channel effort. So thank you, Keith, for the privilege to be a part of this today. And I hope everyone's staying safe during this scary time.
Thanks for joining us, Ben. Erin, you're next.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. Erin Colin. So I run North American sales for Brightcove. Brightcove, we are an online video platform. So really what we help organizations do is upload and manage their videos along with distribute them across a variety of platforms, whether it's their own website, YouTube, social destinations, really the go-to from kind of all the video needs that you would have. Also partnering with a lot of new companies similar to Zoom right now, where we can help companies actually take VOD assets and distribute them as well. From a sales team perspective, we're about 140 globally, and then in the US we have about 50. So we have an inside sales team, a mid-market team, an enterprise team, and channels as well, and sales ops in the Boston office. And then my enterprise team, predominantly field, so all across the country, and then a few in Boston.
So Erin, I guess, just to kind of branch on that a little bit, so what is the sales process? You talked about you have these different teams, so I'm assuming there's different process depending on who they're selling to. So what does that look like generally? And then have you had to make any changes based on, how the sales process works at Brightcove based on the, the current situation?
Yeah, so I mean, the sales cycle in and of itself is really different when you think about a commercial versus mid-market and enterprise team. And so right now we haven't seen too much of an impact in terms of normal sales cycle duration. I'm sure we will start to see an impact as this continues, but a change in the selling motion. So really understanding how to, take more time and look at how we're pitching, making sure that things resonate better. There's less group audiences like this, so making sure that we're really clear for when someone leaves the phone or leaves the presentation, that they know how Brightcove can help them and how they can kind of carry on that message. And then in turn, making sure that the reps know day to day what their expectations are, because the expectations for them really did change since we've all gone remote.
Yeah. How about you, Michelle? At Drift, what, there's, you lead one team, but there's different teams within Drift. So how has the sales process evolved at all?
The process across the entire sales team is changed from our messaging standpoint. So we use outreach, and we focused more on a personalized outreach prior to all of this happening, but we tweaked that right as this all happened at the beginning of March to be more empathetic, but also to stop the sequences and then readjust the sequences to focus more on what's happening in today's world, as opposed to potentially asking for a face-to-face meeting. That doesn't work. And then from a phone call and discovery standpoint, we've switched our process to start focusing more on budget freezes and then going upstream in the organization. So we could typically sell a deal to the manager level, but now we're finding that C-level and VP needs to be involved. So asking those questions earlier on in our sales process, because most people will need to get C-level approval to sign off on anything today.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a huge change. And so with Drift, I mean, you have a broad range of customers who will buy your product. Now, Ben, with what Buildium is doing, it's a very large market, but it is a specific customer that's going to use your product. So how has your, sales evolved at all?
Yeah, so I think our sales process is, Keith, best defined as consultative, and what we're willing to do is working to understand the goal of our prospect. And oftentimes that goal is either efficiency based or growth based. You can really boil it in the crucible down to those two key areas. And then once we understand those two key areas, we're delivering a personalized sales experience based upon those goals. And when I say personalized, what I mean is we're actually demoing a subset of the platform, because it does so much to solve for the specific goal that we learn about. And then we're marshaling resources cross-functionally to talk through ROI, to talk through personalized onboarding experience. So that's our pre-COVID go-to-market, if you will, right? In this new COVID-19 existence, what we're doing is we're actually adding safety to be part of the mix, right? So in addition to efficiency and growth, we're recognizing the fact that safety is part, if not the primary part, of what folks are concerned about and thinking about in terms of our prospects and our customers. And we're fortunate as an organization that the platform can help solve for those things. Examples of that are, tenants paying rent electronically, or property manager in turn submitting checks to a bank electronically, or remote applications to vacant units, or electronic lease formalization, just some examples. And what we've done is we've leaned into coaching and leaned into thinking about the subsets of the platform that help solve for that, and coaching the team up on how we can message to it, but message to it in a way that's super consultative and with the intent of helping or adding value to their new reality.
Yeah, Erin, have you like how have you advised your sales team to reach out? Like Michelle mentioned, they've changed the sequencing, so how are your salespeople reaching out and maybe following up with a lead?
Yeah, well, and we talked about this on the prep, right? And Michelle brought up a good point that at Drift, they don't even have desk phones. But things to remember that people are people. So asking them to get back to the basics of making sure that you highlight the need, leverage video more. We are a video company, getting in front of them, and then asking, for the warm introductions, if you have them, and the empathy, not play, but the empathy aspect of making sure we're understanding really what people are saying, and that we're following up with them in a timely manner. I think right now, leads, if they're finding the time to say that they have an interest or say that their hands are coming up, we have a responsibility to get back to them very quickly, especially when it's about video communication. These organizations, they either didn't have a plan for having a remote workforce, or something's not working and they're really needing us to respond at a faster clip.
Do you think this is going to change sales in general for Bright Cove? Like, you're doing a lot more online, like on video conversations. Do you think there'll be less of that need for the face-to-face meetings?
I think there will be. I mean, I miss the face-to-face meetings. I think it's hard, and talking about dealing with a remote workforce. I was calculating this weekend, this is the least amount of travel I've done in 12 years. And so there's that need that as salespeople, we will have to still want to connect with our customers. I think we're going to have a lot of innovation in terms of making, video experiences even better, so it can get as close as in person as possible. But I do still think that people will be traveling for face-to-face. It just will be a lot less.
Yeah. Michelle, how about you? Like, I mean, also, Drift, the video is core of what your product offering is too. So how are you advising, the sales team to follow up on leads, and, how are they incorporating, video into that?
Yeah, so we used video prior to all of this happening in our outreach to begin with, but now it's more finding a common ground. So more a personalized approach, doing more research when you reach out to an individual and tying that into the video that you're sending, as opposed to going right in with a pitch of what we do. It is hard to find that balance between empathy and also meeting your goals to get to a demo and, creating pipeline. But it's more about taking the time to identify why you're even reaching out to that person, and then identifying how we can help them, and also making sure that they didn't just do a major layoff, or that individual is even still at the organization, which is really important. So it's just overall more research and thoughtfulness that goes into the messaging and the video.
Yeah, you definitely need to do that extra layer of homework before reaching out to people, just to make sure, you're not saying something that you've like, wow, that wasn't very, sensitive based on what's going on right now.
Exactly.
Budgets may be different for companies these days. Maybe, one of your, people on your sales team had a very robust pipeline of great opportunities, yet, for some people at the drop of a dime, like their sales funnel maybe dried up. So how are you figuring out, budgets for companies? How are they actually, engaged are they as far as, making a purchase? Or are they, you look into like maybe, a couple months from now following up with the same pipeline? Like Ben, how are your salespeople dealing with, more of that pipeline that may have changed, or, just general advice for people in that predicament?
Yeah, so I think if there's a big time caveat here, right? And that caveat is that I think this guidance is right in the context of Buildium, and I don't want to pretend to be an expert in myriad go-to-markets or industries. So just that thought bubble for a moment, that this is super Buildium specific. But I think the way we're approaching sorting out budget and budget availability is not starting with that traditional BANT, right? Budget authority needs timeline process. We're actually starting with the thought process of, and I think Michelle touched on this, is leaning into help, right? And the help comes from a place of, maybe as an example, offering insight into how other property management organizations are leveraging technology to stay safe, and to socially distance and to get their job done in a safe way, and serve as that conduit, right, for all of that information out there, because we're talking to a whole bunch of folks in a short period of time. We're also coming up to speed on the CARE Act and current events, right? And with that type of insight, and we primarily focus on an SMB space, so the CARE Act is super germane, and that type of insight is valuable. And that kickstarts a chat, and then from there, having that chat kickstarted with some value and some authentic interest to help, we can then pivot where appropriate. And if we're pivoting to a place of available funds and interest, then that's great. And or if we're pivoting to a place that's just not appropriate at the moment, then that's equally great. And hopefully the time that they spent with us was valuable anyhow, because we helped a little bit. And I think it's also dependent upon, right, the exec team and senior leadership to get scrappy and entrepreneurial. Meaning maybe resources allocated in a certain way yesterday are not the right way or best way to allocate resources today. An example of that would be electronic payments. At Buildium, reaching out to our install base to help them help their tenants understand the value of this in this new world, versus outbounding a whole bunch and trying to reach out to folks that may not want to talk to us because they've never met us. And you know, that cold reach out may be less welcome right now. So that's how we're thinking about it, Keith.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Ben. It's like, you know, you have your core pre-existing customers that, you know, love what you do. So it probably makes a lot of sense to spend time making sure that they're well taken care of. And if there's additional features or functionality that they could leverage out, you know, with, you know, your technology, would be a useful exercise versus, you know, potentially reaching out to someone that has no idea what you guys do or something like that. So now, Erin, like for companies in the same predicament of, you know, that scenario where, you know, the pipeline is no longer as, you know, flush as it once was, you know, I totally lost track of time. Is it 6 weeks now? I forget, 5, 6 weeks we're into now. So, you know, I'm sure you know, companies were sitting down with their sales team and they would go through pipeline reviews, and it was like, I've got this. And then 5, 6 weeks later, it's like, you know, so how would you advise people on how to deal with that?
Yeah, I agree with what Ben was saying, the resourcefulness, right? So some of the big projects are still happening, and those are ones where it is the corporate initiative to, you know, either overhaul how they're handling corporate communication or how they're handling their brand. But it's the smaller projects that we're seeing start to dry up. And so just being there for them, understanding, one, you know, a lot of people have spent a lot of time on projects that are now being put on hold. So that stinks for them. So really understanding them and not, you know, pushing them too hard when they themselves are probably really upset that the project got put on the back burner. And then just being open for what else might be there. So we're seeing a lot of things, you know, pivot from connections into certain marketing automations or certain integrations that might have been a nice to have to everyone's now focused on security projects, how to lock down a video, how to do different things. But so getting the team to really listen and figure out, is there something that we can still work on? It might not be our initial project, but how can we help and kind of pivot that? But we're seeing the names of opportunities change pretty frequently in the forecast right now.
How about you, Michelle? Like, what do you like? How would you advise, you know, people that are, you know, dealing with a pipeline that is, you know, kind of evaporated?
Yeah, just like Erin mentioned, it's all about listening. So it's digging a little bit deeper when you do have that call with a prospect that says, oh, we're in a budget, I can't move forward with this project anymore. Digging a little bit deeper and trying to identify if you can help them in some other way, if they have another project that they're focusing on. For example, we saw a major shift into digital marketing where we didn't have those conversations prior to this. So we shifted our discovery to go down that path. as opposed to pushing them to something else that we may not be able to help them with. But it's really about trying to identify what is happening, what's on their plate today that your solution could potentially help with. It might be something that is not necessarily that your bread and butter, but it is something that you can help them with. So you can still create that pipeline and you can still get that deal in.
So what have you seen? We're going to, talk about actually managing a remote sales team, which, for some people, this might be a whole new frontier where you've got people that used to be in the office, all kind of collaborating, working together, feeding off of each other's energy. How would you advise managers on managing, a sales force, like the best way to keep the team, energized, engaged, productive?
Yeah, we didn't actually have a work from home policy. So it's not that it was frowned upon, but the team was very much in the office every single day. So this was a big shift for us. And immediately it was focused on how can we make sure the reps are doing well, both, mentally, but also professionally. Are they getting everything that they need from us on the management side in order to continue to be successful? Realizing that their worlds have been changed completely. Most of my reps are living with 1 or 2 roommates in a 1,000 square foot condo, and they're all trying to juggle where they're going to take calls from. So being more empathetic on our side, like not necessarily hammering on the metrics, checking in first to say, how are you doing? For me specifically, I want to make sure my team's taking a break from their computer throughout the day, and also reminding them that you do have PTO days. So if you need a day just to chill and shut down, go for it, because they're getting rejected now. Their pipeline is moving out. Their calls are being, canceled. So for me, it's getting on the front lines with more of the reps too, and doing more skip levels, because if I start a meeting and say like, hey, we got to hammer our metrics, we're behind on pipeline, and they're like, every single call is canceled. I have to do a better job at understanding what they're going through before you start to then hammer home what their goals are and focus is. So for us, it's really like reps come first. That's number one.
How about you, Ben? How are you handling, managing a remote sales team?
Yeah, so I've noticed a few things, and this is similar feedback to what Michelle just shared. Number one is PTO has dropped effectively to 0. So across the entire sales organization, and I think Chris mentioned, our CEO mentioned that that's not just unique to sales; it's across the entire Buildium business. I think second thing that I've noticed is that the stressors and emotion that are surrounding this pandemic are real, and understandably so. And I'm experiencing them, right? And in my mind, those types of things should move right to the top of the list of things to consider. And the other thing that I've noticed just from personal experience is that I open up my laptop in the morning, and by the time I close it, the sun has set. And I'm used to going into an office, and there's, you don't have that just focus on a laptop. And then I'll eat, and then the laptop opens up again, right? So I can only imagine that the rest of the team is going through those things similarly. So what we've been doing as a leadership team is we're proactively, and Michelle touched on these, we're proactively asking for folks to take vacation. Please take a vacation day. And then the other bit is when we open up a meeting, we're asking questions about, are you safe? Is your family safe? Are your friends safe? Is there anything that we can be doing to help you? And then the third is the laptop, right? Making sure the flap closes is, asking folks to just step away, right? Like take a walk if you can, and it's properly socially distanced, or just spend some time doing something other than your job. Those are the things that we're leaning into. The one I think kind of mechanical approach is that I think it's hard because we're not learning from osmosis, right? We're not walking around other folks at their desk. So we're getting super prescriptive on making sure that our team meeting cadences are productive, and there's a clear cut, like, ground rules are articulated for a meeting, and the goal is shared before that meeting starts. And leadership is trying to figure out voice of customer trends and share those trends with everyone else, because, we're just trying to be sensitive to the fact that we're not all in the same place anymore. So making sure that virtual experience is as productive but also informative as possible.
Yeah. Erin, how about you? Like, so you've managed all these different teams. So do you already have people that were working remote already? And like, so how have you managed this, for the duration of time that you have?
Yeah, so we have folks all across the states. So we did our QBRs this past week, and the feedback was that the remote employees felt more connected to the ones that are in the office this QBR more than other ones, because everyone was on a level playing field in terms of everybody's at home. They're not the only ones, from their home office trying to make sure that the house phone isn't going off, et cetera. And so it's been actually really collaborative as a team. I think everyone is more aware of the fact that they have to over communicate. They have to be really clear with what they're saying and trying to accomplish. And so it's been nice. It's definitely, the same challenges that Ben and Michelle mentioned in terms of, and this is more for me and for feedback for other managers, don't schedule meetings at a ridiculous hour just because people are home. Try to be considerate and try to keep at least the mandatory work calls to your normal working hours. Like yesterday, Bright Cove had the day off, and we still had it off as an organization, even though the marathon wasn't happening and all these different things. And I think that was really important for us to tell our teams, like, still take the day, don't sign in. We're not going to have meetings. Please try not to have meetings yourself. Even if they don't understand the importance of Patriots Day, but encouraging people to take that time, and then also making sure that we monitor when we're scheduling calls and being cognizant of it.
No, it is a very anxious time right now, especially for salespeople. And, Michelle, you touched on, being cognizant of metrics. So like, how have you changed expectations as it relates to metrics? Obviously, sales is a very metrics driven organization. And then what about, like, if I don't make my number, right? Like, there's that anxiety of, like, I'm supposed to perform as a salesperson, and if I don't hit the number, like, what does that mean for me professionally? Like, how are you handling that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we weren't really heavy metrics in regards to outbound calling. It's really about what you're doing in the top of the funnel that impacts your pipeline generation. So our activity has actually gone up. It's been the highest it's been all year. So I think it's more of making sure the team is balancing that personal time and taking that time to themselves. Because
Why do you think it's gone up? Like, are people just because they're at home, they're more in their own little confined area? And
that's a good question. I think it's because we don't have as many distractions as we do in the office, but we've put a lot of time and effort recently in our messaging and providing them and arming them with the right tools in order to go after their target accounts. So my team specifically focuses on an outbound approach, an account-based selling model. So they have their target accounts. We've given them the messaging. We've tweaked the messaging. We've done more enablement and training on how to go after these accounts more than we ever have. So we've armed them with the tools. We can always do better, but for them, it's more, I think, focus. I know a lot of my team members have requested to work from home because they can just sit down and crank through their work, but it is also about finding that balance. And then in regards to your question about quota, we actually, we incentivize the team this month by doubling what they get paid for deals. So they have that in the back of their mind that if you do close a deal, you get you get more money with that deal that you close, just to incentivize them a little bit more. And we work very closely in regards to areas of coaching with our team. So if you do identify a rep that it might not necessarily be their first time missing their number, if they haven't hit their number in the last 6 months, you have that plan in place already with them. Mm-hmm. But we're going to be a little bit more sympathetic if people aren't hitting their number for the first time in April.
How about you, Erin? Like, how are you dealing with that anxiety of, hitting your core numbers and, quotas and things like that?
We've tried to break it down into bite-sized chunks and make sure that it is a minimum expectation versus something higher than we would normally have. So we have a minimum amount of prospecting efforts, a minimum amount of meetings that we're suggesting that they have. So trying to be very clear in terms of, what are the basics that we're expecting that will, hopefully guide them to pipeline and then opportunities won, but really is focusing on what are the things that they can control, what are the things that even if everything gets canceled, what you could still do within your day, and making sure that they're comfortable with those expectations, and then cranking up the kind of gong emails for wins, right? And so no one's there actually hitting the bell or doing things like that. So making sure they're putting it in our Slack channel, or they're sending out the company email, and that I'm sending out a note back to them congratulating. But when we do have wins, making sure that that doesn't get lost just because we're not together.
How about you, Ben?
So we take the approach that we take to plans, Keith, is a few buckets. Bucket number one is we've highlighted as using good judgment. Bucket number two is a metric based approach, and then bucket number three is revenue. The one that's most impacted now, clearly, right, is the revenue bucket, and we have what we refer to as a 6-month trail. So if you're above a certain percent of plan over those 6 months, then you're in a good spot. If you're not, then we traditionally would have performance improvement conversations. That would be a specific window of time to turn it around, right? We're now loath to put folks on plan from a revenue generation perspective, right? For obvious reasons, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff out of their control. So it doesn't make a ton of sense to apply it right now. That having been said, the first two still apply, right? The using good judgment, even if you're at home or communicating virtually and electronically, communicating with prospects all the time. And then also metrics, right? Just making sure we're putting in the hard yards and the effort required to be successful, even if the revenue isn't there. So we're still expecting folks to deliver against the first two, but not leaning into third. And similar to what Michelle's up to and her organization, we're providing spiffs and incentives for folks on the metrics front, and also on the closed one front, to provide that extra boost during difficult times, to reward folks for performing and helping their customers be successful.
What about the culture side? Like, Michelle, how are you guys, keeping the vibrancy of the sales team intact, like collaborating as a team, even though people are remote and working independent? Erin mentions, the Slack channel and celebrating wins. Like, so how is Drift, accomplishing that same goal of, not being there and being able to get excited when someone closes a deal?
Yeah, great question. We have a gong, and we would do a big celebration every time someone closes a deal. And our VP of SMB, his name's Armin Zildjian, so he is related to the gong company, Zildjian. So he has a gong in his house.
Which is amazing. So he's actually the Zildjian family that has cymbals and gongs, which I had him on our podcast. It was just like, wow.
Yes.
The fact that you guys actually have that family name on that gong is amazing.
Yeah, so he has been really creative and calling out every single person that closes a deal. And there are some videos that he has the gong right next to his son while he's sleeping in bed, and he'll celebrate and he'll go around Maine and take videos. So he's added a lot of energy. Like, we are still in the office, but it's more important now than ever that, I specifically reach out to a rep, and, our SVP and CROs specifically reach out to reps just to boost that energy and celebration.
At Buildium, how are you guys celebrating wins?
Yeah, so we're taking a couple of approaches. The first part is one of the hiring characteristics that we lean into when we onboard folks is sound moral compass. And right now, and again, huge caveat here, right? In that Buildium is in, I think, a somewhat of a unique spot where we're able to provide social distancing. What we're doing is we're highlighting what a unique privilege it is to be able to get up in the morning and jump on the phone and help our customers be a bit safer. And that's delivered in a true empathetic, authentic way, meaning we actually do feel that privilege. And that unto itself, having that chat as a team, serves to motivate in a real way, right? That there's something constructive that we can be doing during this horrible situation to help people out. And then on the more day-to-day front, at a company meeting, a gentleman had his it was his birthday, and there's 270 or 80 folks on Zoom, and Chris Litzer, our CEO, asked everyone to sing him happy birthday, right? So we had everyone singing him a happy birthday. We have team happy hours on Fridays, and folks are starting off meetings with a bit of good news, right? Because there's not a ton of good news if you turn on the news. So we're trying to start some of our meetings with just, share some good news. And I've heard rumors, we haven't done this as a sales organization, but I think it's a cool idea. We've heard rumors of team family feud. So, if you have a team of 20, 10 will be, right, one side of the family feud aisle, if you will, and the other 10 will be on the other and, play family feud. So I've heard rumblings of that. We may lean into that next week or in the coming week.
That's a good idea.
That's how we're going about it. Yeah.
I haven't heard of that one yet. Erin, like you already talked about some of them, but what other tools are you using? Slack's pretty common. Zoom. Is there anything else that you've been finding useful? Outside of kind of the Zoom happy hour type stuff, or?
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing a lot of happy hours, a lot of things. Like we usually do lunchtime on Tuesdays and then happy hour on Thursdays in terms of sharing what's going on outside of work. Like someone has to bring in something that they've watched, read, or listened to. But in terms of tools that we're using to talk about work things, so we're starting it this evening. Everyone's bringing a deal that we've recorded within Gong, and we're going to provide feedback on it. So we're going to have kind of a fireside chat, if you will. We're going to listen to the call as a group and then take pauses and, help do peer-to-peer coaching, along with, one thing that we've noticed with all this time on our hand, we're able to get more of the C-suite involved in deals, which has been incredible. So they're actually even joining these deal reviews as well and providing feedback. So the level of visibility for the reps is at an all-time high, which I'm sure they love and also hate. But the tools that we have like Gong and Slack and Zoom and Google Hangouts and everything have been really helping them keep in constant communication.
Michelle or Ben, any other tools that you've used that aren't, the Zoom or, any other productivity tools that you found helpful?
I've started using our own tool, Drift Video, more than ever now because I'm more cautious of all of the meetings that are added to people's calendars. So instead of having to walk right up to the reps and just tell them a quick update, I'll send the team a quick update at the beginning of the week. If there's something new that's happening, it's just a 2-minute video instead of adding more time on their calendars to do a Zoom meeting. I've never sent more Drift videos before, but it's super helpful.
So you're sending these to your team.
Yeah.
Talk about Drift Video, just in case, I think people should know about how they could use it for their own sales team.
My team will send, it's pretty simple. It's just a video, and the team will send a prospecting email. They'll have the customer's name up on a whiteboard, and they'll say hi, and they'll give a brief pitch of what Drift does or why they're reaching out. For me specifically, I'll give my managers a quick update of focus areas for them on the week. Monday mornings, the same thing with the team, instead of holding that 15-20 minute meeting in person. But Drift Video it's just so much easier to get the message across via video instead of Slack or email. Just shoot it off, and it could be either a video or a GIF. So we actually have a lot of teachers using it now, and professors to do their classrooms. So it's pretty cool.
opens an email and they see a video, you could track if they watch it, right? So
You can track if they watch it. You can also chat with them directly. So
wow.
if they are watching the video, you can pop in and chat with them if they are there. So
Got it.
it's super powerful.
Yeah.
Instead of a phone call, you can get the message across, showing your face. It's more personal. You can just send a quick update. You can actually walk people through a contract. That's what some of the team does. Like, so if they have any questions, this is how you walk you through the contract. It's much easier to get a message across in a more personal manner now more than ever than sending an email.
Ben, anything that you're using at Buildium?
Yeah, so it's it's super similar. Zoom for internal calls, Google Drive for document collaboration. For external calls, we're using something called Jiminy, which I think is effectively similar to Gong, that allows for coaching after calls, which allows us to, in this virtual world, be as effective as possible as a sales leadership team to help folks get better. Chili Piper is an interesting solution.
What's Chili Piper?
Yeah, so we're very fortunate as a sales go-to-market. We have a rock star marketing organization, and I mean that wholeheartedly. And that rock star marketing organization generates close to 95% of the revenue we realize as an organization, and that's inbound, right? So the higher up we go in our go-to-markets, it's more outbound. But if you look at it holistically, the vast majority of revenue is MQL based. And Chili Piper allows us to distribute those leads in a organized and fair and automated way. It's essentially a round robining solution that allows for ease of inbound lead distribution. And it's just so happened that that's something we leaned into organizationally pre-COVID that has served us extremely well in this environment. And the other solution that we've used again pre-COVID that's helped us now is something called Proposify. Proposify allows us to automate and track our proposals. The way to think about it is when we provide a quote, we lean into something called a value proposal, which highlights benefit as well as cost. And we're working with marketing to update Proposify with the slides that we should be leaning into generally as a sales organization. So we're all on the same page in terms of marketing, branding, and messaging and sales execution. And then we can track, once those are delivered out, we can then track to see who's accessing the proposal and how long they've spent with it, right? And then start to track proposal to close as part of our KPIs. So I think the majority of the tools we're using are super similar, but Chili Piper and Proposify stand out as being maybe a bit different.
One of the things that you had me think about as you were talking about marketing, right? So marketing and sales, that there's a strong partnership, obviously. Marketing's having their own stress, right? Where identifying the pipeline for the leads to feed the salespeople. So how is that relationship? Like as a heading up a sales organization, how you're gonna need to feed your salespeople with the marketing qualified leads. How is that dynamic? Staying. Like how are you working with marketing through a time like this?
Yeah, so we're super privileged, and I mentioned this previously. We're super privileged as a sales organization to partner with the marketing organization at Buildium, and our relationship has been very close. We work very closely together prior to this event, prior to this pandemic. So we're really sitting on a sound foundation of a relationship built in trust. And the reason why it's a relationship built in trust is because we're solving for the business together, not solving for sales or solving for marketing. We're solving for Buildium, and we trust each other that we're leaning in to do that. And we have pre-built insight into the funnel. And we know when MQLs are impacted in a certain go-to-market, we have the opportunity or put our heads together and we figure it out fast, right? Because we're tracking this stuff. And then we have the opportunity to pivot. An example of that would be sales wasn't leaning into calling MQLs with less than 20 doors under management. So property managers that manage less than 20 tenants or 20 doors. That would be an e-com focused approach in the past. Well, now we're in crisis mode, right? So we're all hands on deck, and we're being scrappy and entrepreneurial and saying, holding out, a subset of those MQLs as a test to see if reaching out is actually adding value, right? But pivoting and being entrepreneurial together, and also changing the MQL scores, right? So another way to think about it is, do we drop the MQL score to see if, and doing a test there as well. So I think it's a relationship that has a foundation built on trust, and it's also metric driven. And because of that, we're able to pivot and make some play calls and test to see if those play calls are working.
All right, so we're going to open up to the Q&A, which we got some great questions. So I'm just going to open it up. Whoever wants to respond. If you're dealing with, if you're working in your sales pipeline and you're trying to win business that a competitor already has, how are you approaching that? Like when you're trying to actually have your potential customer swap out a competitor, is that something that you're seeing out there? And, is it a good time to win that type of business? Or is it, maybe now is not the time to go, trying to swap out, your competition?
I think if we keep the prospect or the potential customer, I think I prefer that description. The potential customer in mind and what she or he needs, then we're in a good spot, right? Meaning if that customer in this difficult time isn't getting the support and service that they need, then that's an okay chat, right? Or better than an okay chat. Or if there's a certain functionality that enables them to hold on to their business or realize their organizational goals and keep folks employed, that's a chat we should be having. I think it's how we go about it as a sales professional. If that chat is about a bit more tactical, maybe around the blocking and tackling of why we're better from a feature function perspective, then maybe it would be less well received, right? Because that feature war might not be the right time now, given all that's going on. So I think it's about prioritization and solving for folks who you might earn as a customer and helping them be a bit better off in a really difficult and scary time.
Now, if there's not enough leads in the pipeline, is there any other sensible tasks that salespeople should be working on, like cleaning up the CRM or other things that they should be, perfecting their, their sales pitch, professional development type of activities? Like what would you recommend out there? Erin, if you have an answer, I'll let you go.
Yeah, sure. So part of our normal KPIs for sales is learning and development hours. So we have a certain amount of hours that we look for each reps to kind of accomplish on a quarterly basis. So spending time there. So whether that's learning more about key industries that we sell into or new products that we have, but then definitely taking some of the downtime for Salesforce cleanup. No one likes doing the CRM data entry. So, we're all trying to take some time as we start to look for new people to reach out to, or unfortunately, there's a lot of movement right now, taking it upon ourselves to actually manually update Salesforce for us too.
Ben or Michelle, do you have anything to add there?
For us specifically, we did a little bit of research into our industries that are not something that we would typically tackle, and then have the team go back to any really old demo requests or closed lost opportunities that just didn't fit our specific ICP at that time. And it's really just starting to get creative right now, starting to think outside the box that typically manufacturing wasn't something that we would go after, but we're starting to see an increase. So those reps that said, I'm not going to follow up on that lead, you should go and hunt down those leads in your Salesforce reports.
Now at VentureFizz, we had already had a plan in place for our job board to support hiring for remote positions. So it was kind of in our plan. But once the pandemic happened, we accelerated that. So now you can find remote jobs on VentureFizz. Do you think that's going to become a lot more of the norm now that companies are seeing that salespeople can be productive working from home, that there'll be more of an openness to have people work remotely? Ben, I'll let you go.
Sure. Yeah, so I think it's interesting. I think it will be. I think that what we've seen organizationally, and Michelle touched on it earlier, is that we've seen some metrics go up, right? And we've seen something similar building on. I'm not sure if there's potential for burnout there, so I'm a bit nervous, and I think we need to lean in with empathy to make sure we're asking folks to take some time off. But I do think that it's a bit eye-opening that this type of virtual environment can be productive, and if you can reduce costs of acquiring a customer by having a rep in territory versus having to fly back and forth, and have a bit more faith that that person's going to lean in. And the one caveat I would highlight is onboarding, right? So a lot of these folks have been onboarded, and maybe it's a world where the she or he is remote, but hangs out at Corp for a bit to have that onboarding in person and create the relationships required to be successful when they then head out to a remote environment. So I think yes, but I also think yes with a caveat, because from an onboarding perspective, it's interesting. The other is hiring someone purely remotely, right?
I was just
And
going
that's
to
a
ask that, Ben.
whole.
So how are you handling that?
We are, right. So we're fortunately in the position to continue hiring and investing in the business, and we're keeping our eyes open on making sure the funnel is healthy, and we're hiring so folks can be successful, not just hiring for hiring's sake. But we're holding ourselves super accountable to specific characteristics that are, I think, a really good fit for Buildium culture, and that will ensure that folks are happy and successful. And we're being laser focused on those characteristics because, I don't think it's ideal, right? But I think it requires us to make sure that our interview process is really focused, and we're all on the same page regarding, as an example, each person has a characteristic that they are responsible for, and then reporting back to the interview team to discuss as an interview team if we think this person will be really happy and if we think this person will be really successful. That part for me, I think, is the one of the harder parts to overcome.
Yeah, what about you, Erin? Are you hiring, and how are you handling hiring people in this type of scenario?
Yeah, so at the moment, we're not hiring today. We're in a bit of a pause in terms of we want to make sure that the current sales team is as successful as possible. But we had 3 reps start at the end of March while we were fully remote. So even planning that, and those were positions that they were going to be in the Boston office. So watching them now try to onboard and be overly communicative, making sure that they understand what's happening, what's going on, that they get added to meetings faster. I think it makes, from management perspective and for HR, we have to be a lot more buttoned up. There's not oh, hey, Michelle, I forgot to grab you at the water cooler, come join this meeting. We have to make sure that we're doing triple checks on everything. Have we added them to the alias? Have we added them to that training? Have we reached out to them with a type of message? So just being a lot more aware of what the experience is, and leaving less to chance. And then, from an interview process, we have a new mid-market leader who started today. His whole interview process was remote. And so, doing Zoom interviews for, a management person is definitely something that was new for us. A lot more reliance on referrals. Who has this person worked with before, et cetera. Helped us too.
Michelle, do you have anything to add for that? Remote hiring?
Yeah, we're not currently hiring right now, but we have gone through one class where we hired people 100% remote. And then we have one more class where we hired people throughout all of this 100% remote. And I think onboarding and the experience has to be seamless and more action with individuals in the Boston office, or those people who are typically in the Boston office. And just like Erin said, like the email alias that brought back memories where people were not on specific email aliases, making sure it's really tight. That's really important.
Okay. All right. One more question. What's the number one thing that sales organizations should be doing now to drive sales in this type of scenario?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's making sure that when we're reaching out and talking to potential customers, we're making sure that it's all about them. Is it and we're not reaching out with the intent of getting to a number. We're reaching out with the intent of solving for whatever it is that they need. And typically we would have gates, right? Like a give get. You would need, in order to deliver pricing, you would need to deliver that pricing either over the phone or in person, or if you're going to deliver a demo, we need demo to power, right? Someone that can make that decision. I think solving for them now in a real way, independent of gates, and maybe letting those gates go a bit, to make sure that time frame and how folks want to learn and consume price, it's done on their terms and in a way that allows them to feel comfortable and supported. And I think if we make it all about the customer, we end up being in a really good spot.
Erin, what would you add for that one thing that sales teams need to be doing right now to drive sales?
Yeah, so it's two things, but plant all seeds. Like, just go after it, you know, bring it back to the basics, make the extra phone calls, do more outreach, just really, you know, you're going to reap what you sow right now. So take the opportunity to do a little bit more. And then also just keep your blinders on. The world is a crazy place right now. And if, you know, stay focused on what you can control, and that's becoming smaller and smaller in terms of controllable things, but just, you know, as much as you can, stay like this in terms of what you can control at work.
Michelle, what's the one thing that you would have sales teams do to drive sales?
Yeah, be both for reps and managers. For reps, tagging your managers in on calls more and asking for more coaching advice, because you're thrown into a situation you've never been in right now. And I've specifically asked my managers to get closer to deals, doing more deal inspection as opposed to taking the rep's word for that the manager is going to sign off on it, when you know that that's probably not true, but listening to more calls and providing more coaching opportunities now more than ever.
Great feedback. Well, Michelle, Ben, Erin, thank you so much for taking the time to share all these great, you know, words of wisdom, advice, and so many great things that I know I learned a ton today. So I hope everyone else did as well. And, you know, we'll hopefully have this video posted on VentureFizz, hopefully in a couple of days. I'm going to see if I can pull that off. It might be a little aggressive, but we'll see if we can pull that off. But at some point, it'll definitely be out there. So you know, you can share this video with other people that might be interested in learning about how to manage a remote sales force. And I know it's a very trying time out there right now. So if you do know of anyone that's been affected by a layoff or just looking for new opportunities, VentureFizz, we're here to help. We help with the company discovery, and obviously our popular job board has close to 3,000 jobs still you know, open. So there's still companies that are hiring out there. So just direct them to venturefizz.com. Ben, Erin, and Michelle, thanks again for all your time. And, you know, everyone that joined us, thank you for sitting here with us, and stay safe and healthy.